whatever she was researching at the time.
By the time coal cooking came into fairly general usage, the fireplace had moved from the middle of the room to the side wall. Chimneys had been built climbing up the older houses like hollow caterpillars clinging to a leaf.
Tell me a bit about your amazing cottage. How long have you been living here?
Well, I bought the house in 1955. My husband, I was going to say buggered off. You can't say bugger, I believe.
I think you can. I think if you want to.
Yes. And so I was left with 2 children. My 3rd child was born here. But I'd never lived in the country, so I had to learn about how to do it. And it was reading Hartley that I began to get some idea about cooking on the fire and so on.
So the chapter in here about fuels and fireplaces, for you that was like an instruction manual to your cottage?
Absolutely, it really was, yes. I was fascinated to see all her wonderful illustrations of the different ways of cooking on the fire.
Dorothy devoted no less than 30 pages to fuels and fireplaces in Food in England. She researched the book as she roamed the countryside, sometimes by car, sometimes by bike. Sleeping rough under the stars, she relished the hardships.
I was freezing on the Pilgrim's Way. My fingers were claw-curled with cold inside my gauntlets. Almost I could hear the ghosts of Chaucer's riders, their horse bells tinkling down the path like melting ice.
Throughout her travels, Dorothy made connections between the past and the present. When she saw canal workers, or bargees, cooking a one-pot meal on their barges, she recognised how closely it was related to the medieval cauldron. And sure enough, there it is in the chapter on fuels and fireplaces. The food writer Rose Prince is going to cook the bargeman's dinner just as Dorothy described. It's ancient, this dish is.
I love the cross-section in her drawing where you see all of the vegetables with the meat on top all layered up, and look above and you see the cauldron and there's pieces of meat and fat wrapped in cloth. So much of what she saw had to be taken from history books. This was the real thing.
Right, turnips first?
Turnips at the base for sweetness, fresh belly of pork, a little bit of smoked salt pork to add flavour. On top of that, carrots and parsnips. Now, she says water. Just gain a little bit of extra flavour if you have some nice gelatinous broth like this. On top of that, a huff paste, which was a suet crust, essentially. Acts as an insulating layer. On top of that, some sliced potatoes, more huff paste.
OK.
On top of that, some apples. If you're going to have a pudding.
Yeah.
That will fuel the bargee.
It's such a simple but powerful idea, isn't it?
Once you've made that preparation, it cooks itself.
Great.
Oh!
Into the water, do you think?
There we go.
The brilliant idea here is that the one pot will cook the main meal and the pudding and anything else you want slowly in the boiling water. It'll be ready to eat after about 2 hours, or you can just leave it to bubble away all day until the boatsman, like Tim here, gets hungry. Oh, they're cooked! It's worked! That is true cooked food!
And look at the pastry's cooked.
It looks cooked. It looks like a suet pudding.
Uh-huh, yeah.
The apples will get their shape nicely,
Apple
haven't
sass.
Needs a bit of custard on there, I think.
There it is, bit of turnip. Now then.
Great.
they? Thank you very much. Smashing.
You got us a fork there.
Would you?
That warms the cockles of the heart, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's great. Just the sort of thing you need at the end of a day.
What's your final thoughts then on Dorothy, Rose? What does she mean to you?
I think she's the most interesting writer to have covered British food for a simple point that she is the person who found out what everyone is eating. So often we know what kings ate.
Yeah.
And we know what ladies in Tudor households prepared for their big kitchens, but we don't know what people ate. And through her very forensic investigation into all the equipment and the animal breeds and the landscape, she found out.
Yeah.
And that marks her out above everyone else.
I agree with Rose. It's Dorothy's interest in ordinary people that's really extraordinary. And I'm beginning to appreciate that she was a chronicler of her own times. Food in England isn't just a history book. It also paints a picture of the England she crisscrossed between the wars. In her newspaper articles and photographs, her fascination with the way people lived and worked on the land is plain to see. She devotes no less than 29 pages of Food in England to the very mundane subject of sheep.
An old shepherd and myself spent one summer mapping the moorland. It was a curious piece of work and very enlightening as to the mentality of mutton.
Dorothy writes really romantically and evocatively about farming life, but she also includes lots of utilitarian information too, like absolutely everything you can do with absolutely every single part of a cow or a sheep. She brings to life the annual spectacle of the sheep shearing. This is Manor Farm, a hill farm right up above Wharfdale, and it's a good day to be here because it's shearing day. Chris Akerig's family came here as tenant farmers in the Yorkshire Dales just after the Second World War. These days, Chris runs the business with his 3 sons. My turn now. First, we're just going to practice cuddling a sheep.
Just grip it well. That's
I've
it.
got them.
That's
Got
it.
them.
Next.
I love sheep. I love you.
No, don't pull the wall. You always pull the thing
Flat.
back. That's right.
I'm so worried about hurting
No,
them.
you're not hurting there. That's it. Right, put that down.
There you go, you're done. You're done. Oh,
No,
oh
well,
dear. Oh,
Well,
oh.
that'll drop
That's
off.
not brilliant, is it?
But it's not too bad,
I
actually.
haven't finished. Come back.
We don't need a dog, we have Lucy. It's pretty good.
Oh, it's dreadful compared with the others.
Distinctive anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. So what was it like in Dorothy Hartley's childhood then, at the sort of late Victorian times? What was the sheep shearing like?
Well, traditionally, people would help each other do it. And of course, it was much quieter. I remember an old chap telling me once that he was the very first one to take a machine round to one of these parties
Right.
where they all, you'd perhaps invite, you'd do it with your neighbours and perhaps invite some other people to come and they all have a clipping session, you see. And he went with his machine. But of course, it meant that the others couldn't hear each other talking, so they never asked him again.
That's modernity for you, isn't it?
Exactly.
Farming in the Dales has changed beyond all recognition since Dorothy Hartley's day. Over the years, Chris has had to take on more and more land to make a decent living. He now farms around 2,000 acres.
It's not just us that's done this, you know, lots of farms in the Dale have all expanded and taken over another farm, and it's a shame because it's depopulated the Dale,
Yeah.
you know, on the social side especially.
There aren't
But
as
it's
many
necessary-
jobs, though, are there, for
No,
human beings?
I mean, my grandfather milked 10 cows, kept poultry, a few turkeys at Christmas, 20 pigs and a few sheep, and employed a man and a boy and made a good living.
Yeah,
But I mean that would be a sort of part-time job today.
right,
So
yeah.
that's the difference. You just need so much to make a living nowadays.
At sheep shearings, baskets of beef sandwiches were carried around, each with a mustard pot tied to the handle. No one eats mutton at a sheep shearing.
Right, I'm having mustard.
I'm going to have onions, I think.
Go on then.
Dear Emily. Any excuse to eat beef, it's pretty good.
Dorothy's writing is so compelling, partly because she's capturing a world just on the cusp of destruction. She described the lifestyle of Chris Akrig's grandfather and others like him, even as it began to fall apart, with mass production and mechanisation. 2 generations and a world war later, it was a way of life that would be lost forever.
Bracken used to be cut for bedding for farm animals, for covering in root crops, and for weaving into shelters and hurdles. Quantities were used by the slate and heavy earthenware industries to pack their ware for road transport. Now it is not cut, and has become a desperate weed instead of a useful growth.
Most of the research for food in England was done during her wandering years. But after 1945, Dorothy settled down here, in North Wales, and this is where my journey ends. She lived in the village of Ron, in a house she'd inherited from her mother overlooking the Llangollen Canal. It was here that 30 years of painstaking observation came together in her magnum opus, the book that's her greatest achievement. Food in England was published in 1954. Reviewers loved it. Harold Nicholson, writing in the Times, said, "Miss Dorothy Hartley's Food in England will become a classic." He was right. Food in England has never been out of print. By the time it was published, she was well into her 60s. I've come to her house to meet 4 people who remember Dorothy from these last years of her life, including Malcolm Wiles, whose father, Teddy, helped her to move in.
Wiles, she used to call my dad, didn't she? I want you to go to so-and-so. You know, not can you, I want you to go.
Malcolm's wife, Rosemary, still has the letter that Dorothy sent with instructions about moving. I don't know what that is. This was just like Dorothy. Instead of listing her furniture, she draws it.
First of all, in her mind, was her work desk. This was where her writing was done, and she had put that first.
This is the most important item of all of her
That's what I
possessions.
thought, yes.
The desk where she does the writing.
Yes, that's right. And herself last,
Yeah.
the cat.
Sewing machine, cycle, cat, there he is.
Yes, Mark.
Mark the cat. And here's Dorothy herself. She's carrying a packet of sandwiches, a trifle cutter, and it also says that she's carrying a small garden spade.
Yes.
Would you describe her as easy to get to know?
Well, I found her easy to get to know. She didn't phone, she arrived by the door, didn't she? The Welsh are, well, come day, go day, that's the slang word, isn't it? You know, anything'll do, tomorrow'll do, there's no rush, but that wasn't Miss Hartley, it's now, isn't it? That was Miss Hartley, now.
Was she generous?
Well, money-wise, no, because she hadn't got any. But as I say, she'd do anything for you.
Yeah.
She'd never see anybody in trouble, would she, Val? No. Never see anybody in trouble. And she didn't want the world to know that she'd done this, that or the other for him.
She asked me to type a letter for her on
Yeah.
an old machine, a rickety old machine, and she dictated it to me, you see. Oh, she kept changing her mind. Oh, no, cross that out. So cross it out, X it out, no tip-X in those days. And ended up with a whole paragraph X'd out. I said, I'll type it nicely for you. No, she signed it. Later about, just post it on your way home. So I'm afraid I stole a piece of paper from her study on the way home, and I typed it on my machine.
Oh, you typed it properly?
And don't tell anybody this, will you? I forged her signature and posted it off.
the most personal item of Dorothy's that you own?
I think probably the most interesting one that came out of all the boxes and files and papers was her handbag.
Her handbag, look at this, it's the handbag of Dorothy Hartley.
And it's more or less just as the contents were in there.
That seems to me exactly the sort of thing I would imagine her carrying, something big that you could knock people on the head with if you wanted to. Can I open it?
Please do, yeah.
That's such an intimate thing to do, to look into a lady's handbag.
Yeah.
It feels wrong to look into somebody's handbag.
She wouldn't mind.
I guess she'd have done the same thing, wouldn't she? Yeah. If she found our handbags lying around, she'd be right in there having a look.
Something handcrafted in there, she would.
Now, here we've got a little knife. Little horn pen knife. Oh, look, this is so characteristic. It's her ticket to the reading room of the British Museum. Yes. Miss D. Hartley, not transferable. Yeah, it's just the sort of thing I would have hoped to find. Oh, and we've got another one. The Departments of Manuscripts at the British Library. Here's something else incredibly characteristic. She's carrying around an atlas. It's an atlas of the British Isles, so she always knows where she is and where she's going next.
Yeah.
That really is the woman in a bag, isn't it? All of those things together there.
I'll tell you now, Lucy, I walked in here today and it affected me. I've not been in here since the day of the funeral. And when I come through that door...
And she's not here?
There was a lump in my throat. We weren't close nor anything like that, no more than doing things for her. But I still felt, as they say, what it was. There was a lump in my throat.
Having followed Dorothy's journey to its very end, I'm surprised and impressed to find a respectable schoolmaster's daughter following such an unconventional course through life. I've come to realise she's more than a great writer. I think she's an admirable human being. Dorothy died in 1985, and it was Malcolm who brought her body up from the house here to the churchyard. I was really moved by how much Malcolm and her other friends still seem to miss Dorothy. They regret the fact that she didn't leave any children, but instead she did leave us this amazing book. And as I followed her up and down the country, from Yorkshire to Leicestershire to Suffolk to Wales, I've really come to appreciate just how magnificently eccentric she really was. She devoted her whole life to this mad quest to capture a lost world. And thank goodness she did. The world needs these crazy, passionate people like Dorothy. There's just one more piece to put into the picture. A home movie showing Dorothy doing what she loved to do, working in the garden and digging up potatoes for dinner.
If everything I possess vanished suddenly, I'd be sorry. But I value things unpossessed. The wind and trees and sky and kind thoughts much more. What a poetic old party, eh?
And our food, glorious food season continues as Clarissa Dixon Wright tucks into 3 square meals in a brand new series, getting to grips with the full English in Breakfast, tomorrow at 9. Next, though, we have it cold, toasted, wrapped around meat and covered in fat. Time shift charts our loaf affair with bread.